Hey, how's it going, guys, and welcome back to Monster Tamer News, the segment on this channel where we go over the last week's developments in the monster taming genre. This week we got the release of Dragon Quest Monsters: The Dark Prince, which honestly has been awesome. We got a brand new trailer for Photogeist Album and a release date for the upcoming demo. We got Pokemon DLC dropping in less than 2 weeks and more. So as per the usual, sit back, relax, and let's dive in. Okay, so as many of you already know, Dragon Quest Monsters 3: The Dark Prince is now out on Nintendo Switch, and I've been having an absolute blast covering it for you guys. I feel like this game really does take certain aspects of the monster taming genre to the next level, especially when it comes to the game's fusion mechanics, and despite what a lot of people have said about the game's performance, it honestly is a really good game, and the performance issues, while pronounced in some areas more than others, are not nearly as bad as people are trying to make it out to be, because as we know, whenever a new monster taming game drops, especially one that gets a little bit of buzz, some Pokemon fans will inevitably try to downplay that game's achievements by watering down critiques of their own franchise and trying to place them on other games. I will say we've seen with Shin Megami Tensei 5 and now Dragon Quest Monsters that there have been issues with performance on the Nintendo Switch in general. The game isn't borderline unplayable or plagued with glitches like we saw with Scarlet and Violet. The story is far more content filled and there is a lot of depth to its systems, but I'll leave this sort of rant for another video. I'm not trying to rag on Pokemon, it just seems that there's been an influx of Pokemon fans thinking that they're pointing out some type of hypocrisy since people aren't giving Dragon Quest Monsters as hard a time as Pokemon despite its performance issues, and clearly this is because the Pokemon issues are far more layered than just frame rate drops, but anyways, I digress. Speaking of Pokemon, the DLC is set to launch on December 14th, which is the second part of the Scarlet Violet DLC pack, dubbed the Indigo Disc. If you've been living under a rock and don't know, this DLC will bring forth some new Pokemon, a new area to explore that features 4 distinct biomes, and you'll be traveling underwater as an exchange student in this Atlantis-esque school. Just like with DLC number 1, I want to see what it has to offer before I actually decide whether or not I'm going to purchase it, because despite my love for the franchise, I just haven't been feeling Pokemon fever lately, and there's a million content creators that will cover Pokemon far more extensively than I ever could, so we'll just see how things go from there. If you are planning on getting it on December 14th, let me know in the comments what particularly you're most excited for, because I genuinely want to know what people are planning on doing once it comes out, because in all honesty, I wouldn't mind digging my teeth into some Pokemon if it is worth the price. A game we covered on the channel a few times now, Photogeist Album, did recently put out a trailer for an upcoming demo dubbed Photogeist Album Case 0 that will be available on itch.io, and honestly, I love the aesthetic of this game. It sort of reminds me of like PS1/N64 low poly style, but more so in like a Sly Cooper-esque art style, which was PS2 if I remember. But either way, the game looks really cool, and in it you capture and utilize ghosts in battle, and it seems like the camera is sort of like the source of your ability. We're definitely going to have to see more to sort of understand how the game's systems work, but the demo is slated for launch on January 14th of next year, which is just over a month from now, so definitely expect us to dive into it, as I think it could end up being a solid title in the genre if the gameplay is as good as the aesthetic. Next, before we get into the rapid fire news, we got a brand new PAL deck for Pal World. Let's check it out. Alright, next up we got the rapid fire news for the updates that don't require lengthy explanations. First of all, we got a new panda creature for elements. We get a look at the mounting mechanic too. My buddy Nazir sent this to me. Basically, there's a store bundle with Nexomon that includes proceeds for type 1 diabetes research. I'll leave it linked below. Nexomon's an awesome game if you want to check it out. We got a new beastie for Beastie Ball. And finally, last but not least, we got a new clip for Mythcaller, the Nightmare Shaman, showcasing the Decayed Bay underground area. And there you go, guys. This week's definitely been a little bit slower outside of the major news, that being the fact that we got a pretty big monster taming game that just came out, but I am happy about that. it does always frustrate me when there's tons of news when I'm super busy covering a new game. So for the sake of my own selfishness and sanity, I'm very glad that it's a little slower outside of Dragon Quest Monsters, so I can focus on bringing out all of the content I've had planned for it. Other than that, if you do want to stay up to date on all things monster taming, this is the #1 place to be for monster taming content. Check out my Twitter, Discord, Patreon, channel memberships, and PayPal linked below if you want to go the extra mile. And special thanks to our supporters, especially Jim Hamilton, Dro Ghost, Candy Morency, and Tragsoft, and we'll see you next time. Peace.